Welcome to The Growth Show with me as your host, Joe Camerato. I am an entrepreneur who created my company, National Business Capital, from literally $0 out of my spare bedroom to over $2 billion in business loans secured for entrepreneurs nationwide. Since 2007, I have seen just about every type of business. I provide money and help entrepreneurs access capital to scale fast, but I also know that it's possible for you as you scale to replace yourself, to build systems, processes, and great teams of people that can live on without you so you can actually enjoy your life and your company can still grow. I will not only tell you the peaks and valleys of my story, but I will also bring on world-class entrepreneurs to tell their stories and share their lessons on their growth journeys. Welcome to The Growth Show. All right. Welcome to The Growth Show. With me as your host, Joe Camerato. As you guys know, my show is all about featuring awesome rock star entrepreneurs that are growing and making it happen in their industries. Super excited to have a great entrepreneur on today, Eli Schwartz. And not only is Eli growing himself and has grown a really great business in what he does in SEO and being a leading SEO expert, he's also helping others grow their businesses by generating traffic, leads, and more sales. Thanks for being on the show.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me, Joe.
Yeah, thanks for being here. As you know, I love SEO. I've been working on it, for a long time. My business, I started it years and years and years and years ago before people really, talked about, content was like a buzzword, not easy stuff. But I think that, most people don't really understand SEO. I think a lot of people try it. It doesn't work. I think people, throw a few pages up, try and make them keyword friendly and expect to generate all this traffic. And then they don't stick with it and it never works. Really would love to hear from you, how you work with companies and, what does SEO mean to you and how are you successful with it?
So I think the reason that many people don't really understand SEO is because when they get into like their sales mode or their marketing mode or their whatever it is that they're doing to earn money, they forget about their consumer mode. So if you keep that consumer mode on and just like pretend you are a buyer and you don't have to pretend, you are a buyer, and just be in the buyer's shoes for a moment, you'll understand better what SEO is. So I've seen like sites where they write like this garbage content and like, oh, we've checked the box, we've written lots of content. Yeah. And then I'm like, would anybody read that? Would anybody buy from it? And no, they wouldn't, right? So, but if you're in a consumer mode, you're like, well, how would I go buy a pair of gloves online? Like, would I go to Google? Would I go to Facebook? And then, you go through that process of like, how do you discover new golf clubs? How would you buy a car? How would you do research? How would you plan a vacation? And then you can say, well, this is where it makes sense. So I think of SEO as a part of a buyer's journey and not as like a be all end all magic requirement that everyone has to do. So if it's a part of a buyer's journey, if you're planning a vacation, you certainly are going to be doing Google searches, and most likely it is Google searches, but I think that SEO should be agnostic to the search engine. It's very possible that we'll discover that a new search engine will come on the horizon, next couple of years. And I'm not saying anybody's going to invent one because they've tried to invent one, but it's possible that Apple will decide that they're stopping to send searches to Google and they build their own search engine. Or it's possible that Facebook's next pivot is they make a search engine. It's possible that Bing's partnership with ChatGPT works out and people use Bing. So we're not focused on like, hey, here's the magic of how you get around Google's algorithm. It's really, how do you understand the people that are going to be using a search? Well, again, whether it's Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, like these are all searches to discover something. What are they doing? What are the words they're typing? And not even what's the words, what's the intent? So if they're planning a vacation, they want to know like, where do I stay in France? If they're buying something, how much does it cost? Where do I get it? What's the return policy? Like, understand that and you understand the buyer. But instead, I find that many website owners, many product owners, many salespeople, they're just like, well, this is the word. I'm going to go sell this. Like, an example I use is I once talked to this car insurance startup. They raised a lot of money. They had some sort of novel way to sell car insurance, and they wanted to rank number one on car insurance. And I said, there are more companies that sell car insurance than 10. So there's 10 links on the Google homepage. So there are more companies that have been around longer than Google that sell car insurance. So that's the Geicos, the Progressives, the Prudentials. So you and me, maybe you got like $10 million of startup funding. you're not going to convince Geico to like forget everything they've done, or convince Google to like ignore Geico. Like, car insurance is not going to be your word. It's just, it can't happen unless, again, something completely changes. Geico forgets to renew their domain, and Progressive forgets to renew their domain. State Farm goes out of business. Like, a lot has to happen. That's not going to happen. So you need to be like realistic. So then we talked about what their business is, and their business is like saving money on car insurance. So then I said, well, maybe those are the words, and that's the content you want to create. They had like some sort of niche way of approaching car insurance for high risk pools. Like, okay, maybe you want to think about like, I don't know, DUI people or young drivers, like not just go after this big word car insurance. So it's really, I think people make this mistake, going back to your question, because they don't understand themselves. It's not that they don't understand the customer.
No, it makes complete sense. And the other thing I think is that, you know, a lot of people hire, you know, writers, you know, on, you know, Upwork or, you know, whatever, Elance or these different sites. They slap a bunch of content together, they throw it on the website. And like you said, it doesn't really make sense. And, you know, you really have to, you know, as yourself as the, you know, the CEO, leader of the organization, or someone who's really good in your team, like you really have to spend the time to read the content that's putting out there, not just check a box and make it, you know, if your customer read it, that it actually makes sense, and that they would want to do business with you. And I feel like that's where a lot of people get tripped up. They don't want to spend the time, you know, in reviewing, you know, the content.
And again, they're not reviewing it. They're just doing something that's a requirement. And it's not just SEO. It's really every other channel too. So, you know, social media is less so this thing now where like you have to hire a social media agency. I don't see this as much with small businesses. I see, you know, small businesses feel like they have to do SEO. And before you have to do SEO, I'd make sure that there's like a outcome there that makes sense. Like, if you're investing even a small amount of money, $500 a month in SEO, so that's $6,000 a year, you just have to make sure it makes sense that you'll return more than $6,000, maybe not the first year, but eventually. But it's the same goes to social media. Should you hire a social media agency to like represent you on Twitter and build your TikToks and build your Facebook? Exact same question. Are your buyers, are your users there? Do your tweets make any sense whatsoever to your target audience, or are you just there because you want to have the T now X or X logo on your website that you have a Twitter presence? So again, that I would approach all marketing the same way. You do it because it's sales and it's marketing, not because like you're in business and now you have to do it. And I even challenge, like, again, this one's debatable, but I challenge whether every company even needs a website. So, and
interesting.
You know, again, I'll push this here, but there are some sort of service providers that don't need websites. And the reason why is because it takes them away from what they do, and then they show up wrong. So as an example, I moved a couple times and I was looking for a mover, and I landed on these movers websites, and, you know, it looked like, you know, maybe ex-cons were going to be showing up to do my move based on the pictures that they had on their website. I'm like, I don't know if I want them handling my stuff. But now if they didn't have a website, I would have gone to just their Google page or their Google My Business page, seen their phone number, seen that they had, you know, hundreds of great 5-star reviews, called them, they would have given me a price quote. And then the nicest, warmest people might have shown up, and I would have ignored any preconceived notions I had by seeing their pictures on the website. So it depends what you do. Like, I don't know that every restaurant needs a website. Their websites don't even rank well on Google. They rank behind Yelp. They rank behind Google. They rank behind TripAdvisor. So why put the effort in? Like, why have a website with out-of-date prices and out-of-date hours when you could just embrace, again, it sucks. You have to pay Yelp if you want to be promoted, and you have to, you know, update your Google page, but why even bother?
Yeah, that's a really interesting, actually interesting point. I've never looked at it that, but you know, if you've got a really great restaurant, right, and you're crushing it in your restaurant, do you really need to worry about SEO and having an amazing website? I mean, you know, people want to look around the dining room and see that it's a cool place, so have some amazing pictures and keep it moving. Like, you don't have to have your menu on the website. Like,
and so many times it's like the menu is a bad experience. It's like a downloadable PDF.
It's those are the worst.
Right.
Like,
So
not like the ones that you try, like the flipbook stuff. Like, it's a disaster. Yeah.
So you're on your phone, you download it, you're like, okay, I want the menu, but where did it go? I hit download, it's gone. And you can see, and then you know what ends up happening. They're like, all right, DoorDash has the menu, so I'm going to go look at it on DoorDash, and before you know it, you're not going to the restaurant, you're just ordering in. So
yeah, exactly right. That's great. Yeah, so I want to take back. I mean, so just kind of want to hear your journey because you started working for at some big companies doing their SEO, and then you made a leap to go off on your own and be an entrepreneur and help other companies with their SEO. And you've worked for you've helped clients WordPress, Shutterstock, BlueNile, Quora, Getaround, Zendesk. I mean, some really big names. Take me back to how you got started, and then was the leap scary going into starting your own thing?
So I'm super fortunate in that I was able to work for big brands, and I count it to one stroke of good luck. In the pre-show, I was talking about like one of the first jobs I had, where I worked at this lead generation company, and it's where I really learned digital marketing. I was working with affiliates and helping them to drive traffic over to, they were driving traffic to their own websites. And they were selling the leads that they generated on their website to the company I was working for. And I had like a tiny little hand in the subprime crisis because I helped encourage and pay for those terrible leads, which the banks then funded and sold on and destroyed the economy. But while I was doing
Thank you.
yeah, so while I was doing that, I really learned a lot about digital marketing. But the fortunate piece of luck there was that I got that job because it was the first good job offer I got. The recruiter that hired me at that job ended up becoming the lead recruiter at SurveyMonkey, which is a big brand and well-known brand. So 5 years later, or 6 years later, when I was looking for a job and I was at a startup and the startup was kind of not interesting anymore, and I wanted a job and I wanted to go to big brands. I'm in Silicon Valley. A lot of Silicon Valley companies, they put in their job requirements. Computer science, doesn't matter what it is. You could be like, I don't know, the kitchen staff, like computer science degree from like major US university like Berkeley, Harvard, right? So I didn't have that. And, I think this job at SurveyMonkey had that requirement, but I was like, you don't know unless you don't apply. So I applied, and I was fortunate that the head recruiter was the same person who had hired me 6 years before. So she called me, like I put in my resume. She called me and we talked how the kids, how's family, we were living. And then she's like, all right, that's a good phone screen. I'm going to have the hiring manager call you tomorrow. And then for anybody that's ever gotten a job, like the hardest part of getting the job is like getting someone to like you, like to talk to you. Your resume gets you in the door, but then it's you. And again, I didn't have those necessary requirements, but I show up for the interview and I impressed everyone and I get the jobs. Now I'm working at a major brand. I'm working at SurveyMonkey, which everyone recognized because they received so many surveys. And it's at the time it was well funded and well known. There weren't that many like well funded big companies, software companies. So I was there, and I was very fortunate in that I was able to build something that had not been done before. So the company was when I joined, it was about 10 years old. They had never ever done SEO, but they had this huge brand. And because they had a great product, I was able to build a channel that generated, $100 to $2 million a year in organic revenue. And I built my career off that. Like I learned this process. I learned how to be at a big company. I learned how to create this revenue. And after I was there for a number of years, I started doing consulting on the side. And again, I was being paid to be like, hey, can you do that thing you did for SurveyMonkey? Because we trust that brand and we see the work. Can you do that for us? And that was how I was able to build this consulting business to the point where I said, I think I'm earning more consulting than I am in the full-time job. Let me just do this, full-time. And it was totally scary. I mean, like that first Monday morning when I woke up, I'm like, I don't have a job. Like I literally walked away from a paycheck and healthcare, and like, I'm going to go chase clients. So it was scary. And like, I'd given myself to the end of the year to see if it'd work out. And it was, luckily it worked out, and it's, grown since then, building a brand and being able to continue to get new clients and meet great people. So yeah, but when I think back, it was both insane to do, but I also wish I would have done it earlier.
That's interesting. What makes a lot of sense. What do you think what was the most learning that came out of going and doing your own thing? Because everyone gets like some sort of a lesson when they go out on their own, good or bad.
So I'd say that the two big things that I took out of those first couple months. So the first one was really not to work with any client. Like obviously I was a little desperate for money. I looked at every month, I'm like, okay, how am I going to make the mortgage this month? How am I going to, afford all my expenses? So if someone offered me any amount of money, I'd be like, well, it's chipping away at this big rock here. So I got to take it. But there was this client early on where when I went to their office, I'm like, this isn't good. Like these people, I don't think I want to work with them. But I'd given them the big pitch and they accepted, and it ended up being awful. And I took that forward. Like next time, it wasn't really worth the money. it's probably better to like have less money or dip into savings and take a client that's going to give me that much anxiety with how difficult they were. That was great learning. So I'm glad I did that. I'm glad that it was a very short-lived contract, so I don't have to do it. Because I hear about like, I've met people who've done these things for years. They're like, oh, I signed on this client, got stuck with them for 5 years, and I couldn't sleep while I worked with them. So I was fortunate that was short. The other thing is, this is uncommon advice. So most business coaches will say, build your brand, say you're an expert in everything. I focused on only one thing. So I only focus on this very narrow area of SEO around big companies or, companies that want to be big, and really defining what their product is and how they're going to build an SEO channel from it. And everything that doesn't fit in that, I don't work with. Like, I pass on or I make other recommendations. And the reason why is because I'm able to define myself as someone that knows that. And I wrote a book on that, in just that. And that's where I can be, have premium pricing and a premium expertise. And everything else, I can just say it's not my area of expertise. And I see with others where they want to be like jack of all trades marketers, it's harder for them to say, well, there's someone else that does Facebook and Google and SEO and social. And I do it too, but I'm like $10 cheaper. Like, that's not where I want to go. So I would say anybody who wants to do it is like, really define your niche, define the place where you can be compared to apples and oranges, and say, like, I'm just completely different. If you want that, go for that. But this is my thing. I know that. I know my thing.
Yeah, it's actually, no, it's a really great point. And I think that's something that everyone watching that owns a company should really actually take some thought on. I think that was a big key to my success, is like knowing the right, like, my company, National Business Capital, we fund businesses, and there's all types of financing, all types of deal sizes. And, and I spent a lot of time running after all these deals that really didn't make sense, weren't, in my wheelhouse, weren't really what I was good at. And once I put focus on, hey, sticking to the ideal customers and the deals that we know that we could do, I think we had a lot of success. I was just talking about this with my team. Really, I think some of the best deals that I've done are the ones that I've said no to and walked away from, because those are the ones that crush your time, make you look bad, and frustrate the customer. So you can't be a jack of all trades. And when I've worked with any companies that try to be jack of all trades, or agencies that did branding, did SEO, did pay-per-click, did, like, it just never was a good experience. And I think owners should really do what they're great at. And if the question's coming up constantly, maybe just partner up with someone and work out some sort of a deal, where you can still earn, but you're not getting wrapped up in crushing your time. There's power in that stuff.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the agency. So like I said, I like, whenever there's something that's not for me, I refer out to other people and to other agencies. I have specialist agencies for everything. So even though, like, I'll say, here's someone you need to work with for Facebook. They're the best people I know for Facebook. They also offer Google, and I know that they try to pitch to the people I recommend. They try to pitch Google, but I trust them the most on Facebook. So it depends what I think someone needs, and they should be using the best for everyone, and not being like, well, this agency's got everything under one roof, so yeah, that's great. Yeah. Like, I want to work with, like, a Facebook expert. I don't want to work with like a Facebook good enough.
Yeah, 100%. There was just I'm a part of YPO, and they're doing this like digital marketing thing, and one of the topics was, in this new world, working with multiple agencies that specialize in whatever it is. And it's a different world where you don't just work with one marketing agency anymore. You need to have different specialists. And so I think I agree with that. And I feel like I've learned that myself in my business with marketing. You got to bring in the right specialists for the different things, and and then just have like the internal team manage the agencies and like orchestrate it all working together, so it's on point with the brand and the message. So do you think someone should hire an agency to do their SEO, or like, do you think that they should manage and do it on their own? Like, what, just speaking of agencies.
So I think of SEO as a core part of a product. And what that means is, like, it bleeds into everything within a company. And if you hire an agency, they're doing a bolt-on task. It's like, they're painting. So like, paint isn't a core part of a house, but the architecture is a core part of a house. the walls, like the structure is a core part of the house. So I think of SEO as a core part of a business, and it's embedded into all areas of the product. Again, for companies that need to be doing SEO, not everyone needs to be doing SEO. And like I said, not everyone even needs a website. So if you hire an agency, what they're going to be doing is delivering stuff. So say in your case, for your business, if you were to have hired an agency, the agency would have, you're paying them, so they would have delivered stuff. So they would have delivered an SEO audit, like 3 months here, I've audited your website. These are all the things that are broken about your website. Now, I've seen many audits. I've delivered handfuls of audits. I don't do them anymore. And I've received many audits. They're all, in my opinion, a waste of time, because your website, unless something's broken, you're unlikely to unlock any growth from whatever you discover in the audit. There's things like it's probably better to, like, I don't know, have a better title tag, but you're not really going to unlock any growth if you move a word here or there or change. There again, there's some things. It depends on what the issues are, but in most cases, I find that they're not worth the amount of time and the amount of money. So an agency would typically deliver an SEO audit because that's the way they want to start an engagement with a body of work. The second thing that agencies do is they'll give you a plan. Now, I find that the plan is usually independent of the business mindset. So in your case, you really understand your product, you understand your user, and you understand what flows someone through to finding a B2B loan. An agency, they're not going to understand that. You're going to hire an agency, and then they're going to put their junior person on it, and they're going to say, go to a keyword research tool, and this is this website, here's the competitors, spit out some ideas, and they're going to suggest ideas that are not relevant. Like one famous one I have is when I was working at SurveyMonkey. So SurveyMonkey, the bulk of our content was the surveys that customers created. And we were fortunate in that a lot of big brands started surveys on our product and used some big words, but those surveys did absolutely nothing for us. Like, we didn't drive. Actually, one of the products I built was able to try to drive some of the users from the surveys into the product. But again, they're not the right users. Like, I'm taking a survey, I'm a student in school, and I'm taking a survey from my teacher. I'm not suddenly going to decide I need to buy a survey product. Like, traffic isn't useful unless it's the right target audience. So we had some interesting keywords that many people in the world would want to get. So this agency did an audit, and they came to us and said, here's some keywords that you're on page 2 for, and you should really work on being page 1. So I looked at the keywords and I said, did you read the keywords before you sent this over to me? And they're like, yeah, it's a great list. Like, these are very high volume terms. I'm like, how do you think that we would benefit from the word Viagra, like, as a survey SaaS product? So Pfizer was running a lot of their satisfaction surveys and their research surveys on SurveyMonkey, and they used the word Viagra, and they built some great links to it. So SurveyMonkey ranked on the second page for the word Viagra. Again, completely useless for us because we don't sell Viagra. We're not a drug company. We're not a pharmacy. But when you do research or anything for that matter, when you do research like that, and Viagra obviously it's a pill that people want to buy on the internet, so there's a lot of search volume there. Again, maybe it's not the best search volume, maybe it's hard to monetize that search volume, but that's what agencies will do. They'll look for things from not a business standpoint, from a quantitative standpoint, and just say, these are the keywords, go after them because there's a lot of searches, instead of, these are the people, go after them because they want to buy from you.
Yeah, and these things that people are searching for make sense. They line up for whatever your business is. These, based on what this person's searching or asking, they're a buyer and they want to take action.
Yep.
So, it takes a lot of work, though. I mean, I think you really have to be involved in this stuff. I've been involved in, all the content that we put out, and it is really relentless work. It takes time. When you work with someone, Eli, like, like, how does someone get started? Like, where do you start with them, and how do you help them, put this together? Like, are you doing the work, or are you helping orchestrate them building, a team or their internal team to focus in the right areas of, SEO?
So I usually work with larger companies. So I mean, when I work with startups and smaller companies, I'm working directly with the CEO who has the authority to go tell people what to do. But usually I work with larger companies where there's a team tasked with building something. So they have this goal of, we think there's an SEO opportunity. One of the ways they quantify that SEO opportunity is by looking at some of their other channels. They'll say things like, hey, we spend $4 million a year or $4 million a month on this Google channel, on the paid Google channel. We don't have any SEO. We think there's an opportunity for SEO. So now this team is tasked with that, and they don't know what the first thing to do is, because how do you build something that equals $4 million just that, like that? So the first thing we do is we understand, I'd work with them to say, like, who is that user? What are they going to be searching for? What do you want to be found for? How does that fit into the buyer's journey? And from there, we start thinking about what it is that we can build. And we'll usually come up with a number of ideas and say, let's say for you, it could be like a widget, like a pricing widget. Like we come up with all these ideas, and then we prioritize based on this methodology for prioritizing. So we prioritize based on like the effort and the outcome. And then we land on the idea. And then from there, we build it. So like you said before, it's relentless. If it was easy, everyone would just do it. Like if it was easy, and I think that's, the fallacy of generative AI and content. It made it so easy, so everyone's now going to do it, but now it has less value. So like, let's completely different arena, but like think about TV. So like 50 years ago, 60 years ago, there was like 4 channels. So being on TV was a big deal. Now having even being on a Netflix show, like there's a lot of people, I've met people on Netflix shows, like it's not as big of a deal because right. Like you can be on Netflix, point. You can be on Paramount, you can be on Discovery. Everyone's got a streaming platform. I mean, there's some YouTube channels that are better than Netflix shows. Like, so that's the idea. It's like the content is no longer just like, oh, I wrote a 1,500 word piece of content. I really explain the concept of like a veteran business loan. Everyone can explain a veteran.
Yeah. It's a good point. I mean, even it's just funny, like thinking about it. I've said this about my kids. When I was younger, like if my mom brought home a video cassette tape, right, and a movie from the library or Blockbuster, like we sat down and we watched the movie. My kids today, you just go to like the next thing, like the movies don't have as much weight, because like if you didn't watch that movie, right, then there was nothing to, you didn't have any on demand. I think it's a good point, just using that analogy. There is so much content out there, and I definitely want to move to AI and how this is going to change, the game. But I do think by like there's so much content out there, but there's so much bullshit content. So spending the time for quality stuff that makes sense, where people are actually getting value out of. But you got to spend the time, and you got to deliver for your customers.
Right. And if it's easy, then everyone does it, but then it can't be easy because we're buyers, we're customers. We don't just, Amazon has made us buy more stuff. Walmart.com has made us buy more stuff, but ultimately we're still limited by how much stuff we could buy. That's
exactly right. Yeah. And I think, most, CEOs, and I think most, companies, just, want to hire an agency or whatever, check boxes, get stuff out there. And no one wants to, do the work of it, but they want the results. And then they're frustrated that they're not getting the results. So to that point, like, do you think, I've got my own views, with AI, but like, what are your thoughts with AI? Does it completely change the game? For companies, is everyone, going to be able, everyone can pump out all this content. I mean, you can literally right now in ChatGPT, I can go write 50 articles, in probably about 15, 20 minutes, or maybe even less. But is Google going to penalize you for that? Like, because I've heard like using that stuff can hurt you, and Google can tell it's, AI generated.
So I think it's wrong to think about whether it's a Google problem. And I really think it's about whether users will like it. So an interesting thing is many people don't know this, but here, I'm doing a quick Google because I want to get the date correct. I'm not going to say the date. When the printing press came out, I guess in the 1600s, people hated it. They wanted to destroy it because they thought it was going to ruin reading, ruin writing. But it didn't, right? Obviously, it sped up the dissemination of knowledge, and the world is literate. It's a better thing. So ChatGPT and generative AI is the same thing. It's a tool that will now help the spread of hopefully good knowledge, but it is not the tool itself. Like the printing press and whatever year it was created didn't run off and just write random books. So if we view it as a tool to write better, to like research better, like if I would have thrown that question to ChatGPT, is like where were the right? It would have told me all the places, and that might have been like 30 Google searches. I could have gotten that answer real quickly. So that's the idea. It's not like, oh wow, there's this tool that just writes, and now I'm going to make 10,000 boring pages. doesn't matter. So could you write a book with ChatGPT? Yes, but are people going to read it and say that it enhanced my knowledge and it was entertaining for me? No. And I think that's really where we have to think about generative AI. It's a tool to make what we do better and to make experiences better. Could you write 90% of a book with generative AI? Probably. But like that extra 10% is now so much harder because everyone else can do 90%. So I think that's the way it really has to be viewed. Again, as a tool, it's the keyboard, it's the computer. Like, we don't hate the computers. Like, oh, wow, you can, or the internet. Like, now, like, the internet's terrible because you don't have to go to the bookstore or the library to learn stuff. You could just Google stuff. Like, it's changed things, certainly, but it's enhanced the world. So you have to allow generative AI to enhance what we do and not ruin what we do. And the people that ruin what we do will disappear. And really, to get your question about Google's a reflection of what users want. So Google is going to build algorithms to make sure that they continue to filter out the things that people don't want and continue to highlight and elevate, the things that people do want.
100%. Now that makes a lot of sense, actually. And I really like what you said too. It's like, don't worry about what Google wants, worry about what your customers want. I think that's really, key when you're doing this stuff. And I think people get so caught up in the Google algorithm and not delivering for the customers. I think if you deliver your customers, you've got great content, it makes sense, and people are coming to you, they're staying on the page. That's what Google is going to recognize and reward you for. It's interesting. Everyone's so caught up in the algorithm, not the customer.
And that's why SEO has changed. Like, in the time I've done SEO. So like when I first started doing SEO, there were holes in the algorithm and you could do things. And it's much less so now. So like when I first started in SEO, like the SEO person was like considered really smart, really like a real hacker and creative. And now most SEO is like, it's very almost project oriented, and they're diminished within a corporation. Like, it's not like this is our SEO person, this is a person responsible for hundreds of millions of dollars. It's now like, this is the SEO person who reports to someone who reports to someone. Like, it's just diminished because there aren't as many hacks and as many secrets. It's really like, follow these rules and you build a good business and you get traffic. And that's because Google is so much better. Like, I point to COVID, like initially COVID, like the COVID searches. So if you would have done a search on COVID kind of stuff, if there was a pandemic in 2008, I don't know, you would have had like a lot of people monetizing different ways. Like, could search COVID and you would have like someone selling masks or like something like that. But if you search COVID, even now, I might haven't searched COVID in a while, but like you search COVID, it was like, you're not weighing into the conspiracy here, but it was the people that should be ranking. It was like, here's the CDC's page, and here's like, I don't know, whatever Mayo Clinic page, like, it's really definitive. And they really eliminated all of the people that might have used SEO hacks to show up because Google got so much better.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. This is really good stuff. What are you most excited about right now as we move into the future, with all this stuff and as your industry changes?
So I like change. I think it gives an opportunity to do different things. Like, I came up with this concept of like what I called product-led SEO, and I wrote my book, Product-Led SEO, around it while I was at SurveyMonkey. And the reason I wrote this book was because as I would explain to potential clients, like, hey, here's the way I approach SEO. There has to be a user. You want to build around the user. You want to focus on the conversion and not focus on the keyword. They would say, like, that's very novel. I haven't really heard that anywhere. Just all I hear is like, buy links, put in keywords, spend a lot of money as an agency. Is there anywhere more I can learn about it? So I started writing the book because, like, well, that's the place they can learn more about it. And it's still, while I have sold many books and it's changed conversations, hasn't really changed the general conversation. Most people are still focused on like, okay, that sounds great, but like, how many times do I use that keyword on my page? And should I have it like on the title of every page? Like, where do I get the best links? And like, it doesn't really change the conversation, but I think generative AI will just eliminate it. If you think about like generative AI, there's no keyword. It's a concept. So like you're ranking on a concept. So
and
like
a question, answering a question.
Exactly. So there's no keyword. So that conversation is dead. And the same goes with links. I think links do matter, but not like in a one-to-one way that people think they work with current search. They don't work the way they do in current, like the way people think they do. But once it changes, like it won't work at all. Like links are not like, you'll see sites without good links. showing up in generative AI, and that will be obvious. So therefore, there will be less of a chase like, oh, I can't rank unless I have good links. So I think it's going to bring the conversation back to where it should be. Like, what's the user? What are they trying to solve? How do we do a better job? Even for someone like you, where you're providing information about how to get business funding, generative AI might take that. But now you need to move to the middle of the funnel of like, how do I tell you which loans to take? Because generative AI cannot do that part. So whereas now the informational piece might start in search or actually end in search, because that's what generative AI can do, they're still going to need to provide something. Like even thinking about like a, travel research, vacation research. Okay, I want to figure out where in Europe do I go on vacation. I don't need TripAdvisor anymore. I don't need all these travel blogs. Generative AI will just tell me, but you still need to get on planes and go to those hotels. Like someone needs to sell that. So
correct. Yeah.
consumption won't
back.
change.
It's like you're going to like learn it from there,
Yeah,
get like the answers, but then you're going to go to Google to go take the action or buy the product or service.
exactly. So consumption doesn't change. It's the learning process.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. So then, then it's like it's part of the funnel, right? Like the answers and the information from AI is great. And then can maybe, you can point them somewhere to go to or do something, or, but you still need to come up, on the actual search in Google or whatever.
Exactly.
Good stuff. Yeah. So we always like to share what is, as we wrap up, what's a growth tip that you would share with fellow entrepreneurs out there?
I would audit your budget, your marketing budgets, and just try to envision an ROI from anything you're spending on. And like, there's an extreme way to do this. I mean, like, do I even need an office? Like, I don't know. If you have an office, like, don't even touch your office. But like anything on a marketing standpoint, if you're spending money on someone tweeting for you, even if it's like $500 a month, just some, random intern tweeting for you, like just audit that and say, at the end of the year, do I think this will drive a customer that will make that spend worth it? And I think if you do it like that and really approach all of your spend from that mindset, you'll discover places that don't work as well. And then from there, you take the savings and put it where it does work. Like there was this company I talked to, they were in the landscaping space. Like they sold, I think, a SaaS for landscapers, and they want to do SEO. And I asked them, first of all, no one looks for SaaS for landscapers. Like I don't know that the guy that does my lawn like uses a tool like on his phone. So they don't look for it, but when they find it, they like it. So I asked them where they get all their existing customers, and they said we go to trade shows. There's trade shows all over North America where they talk to landscapers. So I was like, why don't you take the $10,000 you thought of you were spending, $10,000 per month you were planned on spending on SEO, just go to more trade shows, give out more swag, talk to like, do more happy hours. Like obviously that's what works. This digital channel, it's unproven. Probably it doesn't make sense to me to work because they don't search for your product. So just keep spending where you are. So that's what I would, that's my tip is like audit that spend. If you don't need to do SEO, don't do SEO and just take that money, put it into what works.
Simple, awesome advice. It's amazing how as entrepreneurs, we always feel like we have to do a new thing, and what is working, we don't do more of. It always is really wild to me how many of us, do that. I think it's really great advice. Thank you for the growth tip, and thank you for being on the show. How can folks, find you, Eli?
Just Google me. Like, if I show up, my LinkedIn is on Google. Just Google Eli Schwartz, and you'll find my LinkedIn, you'll find my website, you'll find my book. Like when I think about SEO, it's about the end goal. So the end goal is someone's going to contact me and find me. So it really doesn't matter which of those properties it is on. I'm not monetizing my website. Like it's not a better contact form if you're on my website versus LinkedIn.
Yeah, and you better come up if we Google your name, right? Because that's what you do.
Well, I don't care to come up for anything but my name, and that's all. It's not an intentional link building thing. It's a byproduct of doing good PR, like you've done for your business. It's a byproduct of showing up and being in the right places and speaking at the right events, and like that's what fills Google. It's not what fills Google's like. I had a friend a high school friend who I hadn't talked to in 20 years, who called me and said he had an SEO emergency. So immediately I knew what that was. I was like, okay, cool. How drunk were you? And he's like, well, I wasn't that drunk. Like, he was a DUI and he was trying to get rid of it out of the Google results. And he hired a firm that created a bunch of stuff, and then it doesn't work because it's fake. So PR for SEO is really about doing regular PR, not like building a bunch of fake pages and fake YouTubes and fake Facebooks. It's so that like total tangent here, but that's how my Google shows up, because I spoke at those events and I built those channels. And
Yep.
if you're building that for your business, you do the same and don't look for secret hacks.
Yeah, good stuff. No, I really appreciate all said today. Really great conversations. Again, thanks for being on the Grow Show, and keep doing what you're doing and keep growing, Eli.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.